Welcome back. I hope you're doing well. In the previous lectures, we understood what is an RDD and when to use them. As a part of this lecture, we'll understand how do we really create the RDDs. Any thoughts before we get started? Can you think for a bit? Yes, we can create the RDDs in three ways. First way or first method is by interoperating between the data frames, data sets and RDDs. Second way is we can create an RDD from a local collection. Third way is we can create an RDD from data sources. So these are the three ways of creating the RDDs. We'll see them one by one. First and foremost is we can create a RDD by interoperating between the data frames and RDDs. We're going to touch upon only the data frames here because we are in a PySpark class where data sets are not valid for the PySpark because data sets are only available in JVM based languages which are Java and Scala. So how do we create an RDD by interoperating them? It is one of the easiest way to create a RDD by existing data frame. If you have a data frame already, we can create an RDD by a RDD method. So easy. What are the data frame you have? Let us say data frame name dot RDD. Your RDD is ready. Isn't that simple? Yes, it is. One more important thing here is, as we already discussed, Python doesn't have the data sets. It has only data frames. That's the reason whenever you create the RDD from a data frame, you will get a type row. We have already indicated what is type row in our earlier classes. So now we have understood how to create a RDD from a data frame. How about creating a data frame from RDD? Very, very simple. We can create a data frame by using RDD by a 2df method. By using 2df method, we can create a data frame. Isn't this again simple? It is simple. Some of the aspects we have to remember whenever we create a data frame by using the RDD. So this is the command we already discussed. 2df is the method we are using on a RDD to create the data frame. As I already indicated, this is creating an RDD of type row. This row is the internal catalyst format that Spark uses to represent the data in the structured APIs. Remember, we have discussed about the catalyst engine during our earlier classes in the structured API execution. The same catalyst engine has a format. Whenever you create a data frame by using a 2df from an RDD, then that creates an RDD of type row. That row is in the internal catalyst format. One more important aspect is this function makes it possible for us to jump between the RDD and data frame, or whatever you are trying to play. You want to play from RDD to data frame to RDD. Having understood how do we create the RDD by interoperating between data sets, data frames and the RDDs, let us move on to the next way of creating an RDD. That is RDD from a local collection. Again, it is very, very simple. We can create an RDD from a local collection by using a parallelize method on a Spark context. Why do we use the parallelize method? What parallelize method does is it converts the single node collection into a parallel collection. Remember, we got to have the partitions that can be parallelly distributed, that can be distributed across the different executors. That is the reason whenever you create a RDD from a collection, we got to use the parallelize method. That parallelize method converts the single node collection into a parallel collection. Whenever we are creating the RDD in the parallel collection, we can explicitly state how many number of partitions are there. Let us see that by an example now. Okay, if you can see here, I have a my collection that is in a way variable. For that, I am assigning some running text. I am also using split method so that it can split any spaces here. Words is an RDD. This is the name of the RDD. And if you really observe, I'm using a Spark context here. Remember, whenever we want to work with the low level APIs, we have to go through the Spark context. And as I indicated earlier, I'm using a parallelize method so that it can convert the single node collection into a parallel collection. So this is the variable in which we have our collection. And what is this? This is the number of partitions. Remember, when we discussed, we want to use the RDD whenever we want to have a physical control of the data. Now that when you specify two partitions, Spark will just obey your order and create the two partitions immaterial of the data size. Wonderful. This is how we create an RDD by using a local collection. One more additional feature is that you can name this RDD to show up in the Spark UI according to the given name. So if you are not liking the name whichever you are giving, you can name that in such a way that it appears as a my words in UI. When we see the UI, we'll try to observe that. We have seen two ways of creating an RDD. One is by interoperating between the data frame and RDD. The second one is creating an RDD from a local collection. The third way is we can create an RDD from data sources. Although we can create a RDD from the data sources or text files, it is always better to create an RDD from the data sources API. What do I mean by that? See, RDD do not have any notion of the data source APIs. Data source APIs are for a data frames and structured APIs. The data frames are structured APIs use the data source APIs to read the data and create the data frames. Data source APIs are used to create the data frame by reading the data from a different sources. So RDD do not have any data source APIs. That is the reason it is always better to create the data frame by reading any data source. When I say data source, it can be a file. This file can be a CSV file, JSON file. Whenever you want to create a RDD, first create the data frame by reading that file using a data source API. That means to say that we are suggesting first create the data frame by using a data source API, then convert that into RDD by using a RDD method. That is the best way to create an RDD from a data source. No, I don't want to first create a data frame by reading a data source and then converting into RDD. If you don't want to do that, you can always create a RDD by reading a data source. In that case, obviously, we need to go through Spark context. So you say Spark context, and provide the text file method and provide the path where your data source is there, where your file is there. So this creates an RDD for which each record in the RDD represents a line in the text file. For example, this is a file. We have 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a RDD. This line becomes a record in an RDD. Wonderful. We understood how do we really create an RDD by using three ways: by interoperating between the data frames and RDDs, creating an RDD from a local collection, creating an RDD from data sources. Thank you. You have a wonderful time.